The crystal towers of Serenity Prime glowed with a soft blue light as Ambassador Veltar hurried through the halls of the High Council chamber. His crystalline body rang like wind chimes with each step, a sound that usually brought comfort to his people. Today it sounded like a funeral bell. The holographic displays around him showed the same terrible news. Red markers spread across the star map like a disease. The Korthak Dominion had taken another 3 worlds in the past week. Their brutal reptilian forces crushed everything in their path, turning peaceful colonies into smoking ruins. "How many more?" asked Counselor Jara, her crystal form flickering with distress. "How many more of our worlds will burn?" Veltar looked at the tactical display. The Korthak fleet moved like a swarm of angry insects, consuming everything they touched. His people had never known war like this. The Zephyrian Federation had spent centuries building a peaceful society. They had libraries that stretched across continents, art galleries that floated in zero gravity, and meditation gardens that helped visitors find inner peace. None of that mattered to the Korthak. They saw only weakness to exploit. "We need help," Veltar said quietly. "Our defense fleet cannot stop them. Our weapons are designed for mining asteroids, not fighting wars." The High Council chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the crystal walls. Everyone knew what needed to be done, but no one wanted to say it. The Zephyrians would have to ask for help. "Send the message to the Ethereal Collective," suggested Counselor Moran. "They have wisdom beyond measure. Surely they will help us." "What about the Synthari Republic?" asked another. "Their technology could match the Korthak weapons." Veltar nodded slowly. "We will send the distress call to all civilized species. Someone must answer." He walked to the communication chamber, a dome-shaped room filled with quantum transmitters. The equipment could send messages across half the galaxy in minutes. Veltar had used it many times for diplomatic exchanges and cultural sharing. Now he would use it to beg for his people's lives. The message took hours to compose. Every word had to be perfect. It needed to convey the desperate situation without making the Zephyrians look completely helpless. It had to appeal to the better nature of civilized beings across the galaxy. To all peaceful and wise species of the galactic community, the message began. "The Zephyrian Federation faces extinction at the hands of brutal aggressors. The Korthak Dominion destroys everything they touch, showing no mercy to civilians or respect for cultural treasures. We are a people of art and learning, not warriors. Our children have never known violence. Our elders remember only peace." Veltar paused, his crystal fingers dancing over the controls. He added details about Zephyrian culture, their contributions to galactic science, their vast libraries and peaceful way of life. He described the Korthak attacks with careful words, painting them as savage destroyers who threatened not just the Zephyrians but the very idea of civilization. "We ask for protection from those who value peace and beauty." The message concluded, "Help us preserve what generations have built. Do not let barbarism triumph over enlightenment." The message went out on all known diplomatic frequencies. It raced through hyperspace relays and quantum communication networks. Within hours, it would reach every major civilization in the galaxy. On the outer rim of charted space, far from the polite diplomatic channels of the galactic core, the message reached a small patrol ship. The UES Defiant hung in the darkness between stars, its sensors sweeping space for pirates and smugglers. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, reviewing patrol reports. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet had been stationed in this sector for 2 years, keeping watch over humanity's newest colonies. It was quiet work, usually boring. Pirates occasionally tried to raid the shipping lanes, but they rarely put up much of a fight. The communication officer looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal. Long range, not from any human colonies." "Put it on speakers, Lieutenant." The Zephyrian message filled the bridge. Sarah listened carefully, her dark eyes focusing on the star charts. She had never heard of the Zephyrian Federation, but the location matched reports of increased military activity in that sector. "Sounds like they're getting hammered by someone called the Korthak," said Commander Williams, her executive officer. "Never heard of them either." "Database search shows nothing on either species," reported the communications officer. "But the signal is definitely authentic. Whoever sent this is scared." Sarah stood up and walked to the main display. The tactical computer had plotted the approximate location of the Zephyrian worlds. It was a 3-week journey at best speed, far outside normal patrol routes. They're asking for help from peaceful and wise species, she said thoughtfully. Think they'd be interested in help from Deathworlders? Commander Williams grinned. Only one way to find out. Should I contact Admiral Rodriguez? Sarah nodded. Send the message up the chain. Include our tactical assessment and recommend immediate response. Someone is conducting organized military operations in that sector, and they might threaten our colonies next. The message traveled through military channels much faster than the original Zephyrian distress call. Within 2 hours, it reached Admiral Marcus Rodriguez aboard the flagship Indomitable. The Admiral was a veteran of the Martian Liberation Wars and the asteroid belt conflicts. He had spent 40 years in the service, fighting pirates, terrorists, and the occasional alien raider. Rodriguez read the reports twice, then called his staff officers together. The briefing room filled with the sound of boots on metal decking as captains and commanders took their seats. Gentlemen, ladies, the Admiral began, we have a situation. Unknown hostile forces are conducting aggressive military operations approximately 3 weeks from our position. They appear to be targeting civilian populations. The tactical display lit up with the information from the Zephyrian message. Red arrows showed the probable path of Korthak expansion. If they continued their current course, they would eventually reach the outer human colonies. Sir? Asked Captain Morrison of the heavy cruiser Hammer of Justice. What do we know about these Zephyrians? Could this be a trap? Intelligence assessment says probably not, Rodriguez replied. The message content suggests a genuinely peaceful species under attack. Cultural references indicate high technology but limited military capability. And the attackers? Unknown. But they're organized, aggressive, and effective. Classic expansion pattern. Hit the weak targets first, build strength, then go after bigger prey. The room fell quiet as the officers studied the displays. Everyone understood the implications. If hostile aliens were expanding in that direction, human space might be next. Sir, said Captain Chen via the communication link, request permission to investigate. Admiral Rodriguez looked at his assembled officers. These were veterans of dozens of conflicts, men and women who had fought across human space for decades. They were used to dealing with pirates and criminals, not alien invasions. Negative, Captain Chen. If we're going to do this, we do it properly. He turned to his staff. Signal the entire 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. All ships are to prepare for immediate deployment. We leave for Zephyrian space in 18 hours. The entire fleet, sir? Asked Captain Morrison. That's 200 ships, Rodriguez smiled grimly. If someone is picking on peaceful aliens, they're about to learn what happens when they mess with Earth's neighbors. Time to remind the galaxy why humans are called Deathworlders. Ambassador Veltar stood in the observation dome of Serenity Prime's orbital station, watching the stars. 3 days had passed since they sent the distress signal. So far, only silence answered their plea for help. The Korthak forces were now only 2 jumps away from the capital system. Any responses? Asked Counselor Jara as she joined him at the viewing window. Nothing from the Ethereals or the Synthari, Veltar replied, his crystal form dimming with worry. The Hegemony Council sent sympathies but no ships. They say their forces are committed elsewhere. Below them, Serenity Prime glowed like a jewel in the darkness. Cities of crystal and light spread across the continents. Parks and gardens filled with gentle creatures who had never known predators. Libraries containing the wisdom of 1,000 worlds. All of it would be ash if the Korthak arrived. The sensor technician's voice crackled over the communication system. Ambassador, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching the outer system. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Veltar's crystal heart sang with hope. Finally! Which species responded? The Ethereals? Unknown configuration, sir. The ships don't match any known design in our databases. The main display activated, showing long-range sensor readings. Veltar stared at the data in confusion. The energy signatures were enormous, far larger than any ethereal vessel. The ships appeared to be made of metal rather than the elegant crystal or bioorganic materials used by civilized species. How many ships? He asked. The technician's voice trembled. 212 vessels, sir. Ranging from small escort ships to... Sir, some of these readings suggest ships over 2 kilometers long. Veltar felt his crystal body go cold. No peaceful species traveled with such massive fleets. The Ethereals might send a single wisdom ship. The Synthari would dispatch perhaps a dozen vessels at most. This looked like an invasion force. Are they Korthak reinforcements? Whispered Counselor Jara. Before Veltar could answer, the communication system activated. The main screen flickered to life, showing a face that made both Zephyrians step backward in shock. The creature looking at them appeared to be some kind of predator. It had two eyes positioned forward on its skull, suggesting a hunting species. When it opened its mouth to speak, Veltar could see sharp white teeth. The being's skin was a strange pink color, and coarse hair grew from the top of its head. "This is Admiral Marcus Rodriguez of the United Earth Stellar Navy, 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call and are responding to provide assistance." Veltar found his voice with difficulty. You are from Earth?" "That's correct. We understand you're having trouble with hostile forces in your space. My fleet is prepared to render aid." The word fleet sent another chill through Veltar. He forced himself to speak calmly. "We are grateful for your response, Admiral. We were not aware that Earth was among the civilized species." Admiral Rodriguez made a strange expression, pulling the corners of his mouth upward. Veltar realized with horror that this might be how the creature displayed its teeth before attacking. "We're pretty new to the galactic community," the human said, "but we take a dim view of bullies picking on peaceful folks. What can you tell us about these Korthak forces?" Veltar quickly explained the situation, describing the Korthak invasion and the destruction of the outer colonies. As he spoke, he noticed other humans appearing on smaller screens around the bridge. They all had the same predator features: forward eyes, visible teeth, and an unsettling alertness that reminded him of hunting beasts. "Sounds like a standard expansion campaign," commented one of the humans. "Hit the soft targets first, build up strength, then go after the bigger prizes. What's their approximate force strength?" asked another. "According to our intelligence, approximately 800 ships of various sizes," Veltar replied. The humans exchanged looks. Several of them made that teeth-showing expression. 800 ships for an entire invasion?" asked Admiral Rodriguez. "That's not very ambitious." Veltar stared at the screen. "Admiral, 800 ships represents a massive military force. The Zephyrian Defense Fleet has only 30 vessels, and they are primarily designed for asteroid mining and rescue operations." "Right," said the Admiral. "Well, don't worry about it. We'll sort this out. What's the tactical situation at your outer colonies?" "I'm afraid all of our outer colonies have been destroyed," Veltar said quietly. "The survivors managed to evacuate, but the Korthak forces showed no mercy to civilian populations. The change in the humans was immediate and unsettling. Their casual expressions hardened into something that made Veltar's crystal core vibrate with fear. Several of them began speaking in rapid, harsh tones. "They're targeting civilians?" asked Admiral Rodriguez, his voice much colder than before. "Yes. They seem to take pleasure in destroying cultural sites and centers of learning." "I see." The Admiral turned to speak with other humans off-screen. Veltar could hear fragments of conversation. Rules of engagement. Acceptable casualties. Kinetic solutions. The casual way they discussed violence made Veltar realize that perhaps the Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake. These humans seemed as dangerous as the Korthak, possibly more so. Admiral Rodriguez turned back to the screen. "Ambassador will be moving to engage the hostile forces. I recommend your people stay clear of the combat zone. Things might get messy." "Admiral, perhaps we should discuss diplomatic solutions first. The Galactic Mediation Council has protocols for—" "Ambassador," the human interrupted. "They're killing civilians and destroying libraries. Diplomacy was their choice to abandon. We'll handle this our way." The communication ended, leaving Veltar and Counselor Jara staring at a blank screen. "What have we done?" whispered Jara. Before Veltar could answer, the sensor technician's voice filled the chamber again. "Sir, the Earth ships are moving into the system. Their formation, it's unlike anything I've ever seen." The tactical display showed the human fleet spreading out like a pack of hunters. Their ships moved with aggressive precision, taking positions that suggested they were preparing for immediate combat rather than diplomatic contact. "Sir," the technician continued, "I'm also detecting energy signatures from the edge of the system. Korthak ships are dropping out of hyperspace." Veltar watched the display with growing horror. The Korthak invasion force was arriving at the same time as the human fleet. Instead of salvation, the Zephyrians were about to witness a battle between two groups of what appeared to be equally dangerous predators. On the edge of the system, Warlord Thackus studied his own tactical displays from the bridge of his flagship. The reptilian Korthak commander had been looking forward to adding the Zephyrian capital to his collection of conquered worlds. "What are those ships?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Unknown design, warlord. They appear to be metallic constructions, heavily armed. The energy signatures suggest significant offensive capability." Thakos flicked his tongue, tasting the air for signs of danger. "Are they Zephyrian reinforcements?" "Negative, sir. The configuration is completely different. These appear to be from an unknown species. Another prey species," Thakos decided. "Probably refugees fleeing our advance. We'll deal with them after we finish with the Crystal Singers." He ordered his fleet to continue their attack approach. The Korthak had conquered dozens of worlds. No species had ever successfully resisted their advance. These newcomers, whoever they were, would learn the same lesson as all the others. Neither the Korthak nor the Zephyrians were prepared for what was about to happen. In a few hours, the galaxy would discover why humans were called Deathworlders, and why Earth was considered the most dangerous planet in known space. The mining world of Kepler's Rest had been a peaceful place before the Korthak arrived. Its crystal formations provided materials for Zephyrian art and technology. Small communities of miners and their families lived in harmony with the planet's gentle ecosystem. Now smoke rose from burning settlements. Korthak ships orbited the world like metal vultures, their crews preparing for the final assault on the remaining population centers. Warlord Thakos had chosen this world as his forward base for the attack on Serenity Prime. On the bridge of his flagship Bone Crusher, Thakos studied the tactical displays. His intelligence officers had finally identified the unknown ships that had arrived in the system. "They call themselves humans," reported Subcommander Grak. "Species unknown to our databases. Their homeworld is listed as Earth. Coordinates suggest Outer Rim territory." "Weapon capabilities?" Thakos asked, his reptilian eyes focused on the display. "Difficult to assess, Warlord. Their technology appears crude by galactic standards. Metal construction, primitive chemical propulsion systems. However, their energy readings are unusually high." Thakos flicked his tongue dismissively, probably overloading their reactors to appear more dangerous. A typical fear response from prey species. The Korthak had seen this behavior before. When faced with superior force, weaker species often tried to bluff their way out of conflict. These humans would learn the same lesson as the Zephyrians and dozens of other conquered peoples. "Shall we demand their surrender?" asked Grak. "No need. After we finish with the mining world, we'll deal with them. They'll probably flee once they see what happens to those who oppose us." 3 light hours away, Captain Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Indomitable. The ship was one of humanity's newest designs, built specifically for ship-to-ship combat. Its armor could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Its weapons could crack asteroids in half. "Tactical assessment, Commander Hayes?" she asked her weapons officer. 43 Korthak vessels in orbit around Kepler's Rest. Mixed cruisers and destroyers. Standard aggressive formation. They're conducting orbital bombardment of the surface. Captain Park studied the enemy positions. The Korthak ships were arranged in a classic blockade pattern, confident in their superiority. They weren't even maintaining combat spacing, clustering together like they expected no real resistance. Any sign of Zephyrian civilians on the surface? Thermal scans show large groups in the underground mining complexes. "Looks like they're hiding in the deepest tunnels they can find." Park nodded grimly. The civilians were trapped between the Korthak above and solid rock below. A conventional orbital assault would take hours to dig them out safely. Unfortunately, the Korthak didn't seem interested in giving them hours. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "We're going to show these lizards how Earth handles bullies." The human fleet moved into attack formation with deadly precision. Unlike the Korthak cluster, the human ships spread out into overlapping fields of fire. Each vessel could support its neighbors while maintaining clear targeting solutions. Admiral Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system. "All ships, this is Big Dog. We have confirmed targeting of civilian populations by hostile forces. Rules of engagement are now weapons-free. Show them why we're called Deathworlders." On the Bone Crusher, Sub-Commander Grak looked up from his sensors. "Warlord, the human ships are approaching. They appear to be adopting an attack formation." Thakos laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "Foolish mammals. Do they think their metal toys can challenge Korthak might? Should we break off the bombardment to engage them?" "No, let them come. We'll finish both the miners and these deluded aliens at the same time. The first human ship to enter weapons range was the destroyer Swift Justice. Its captain, Commander Sarah Kim, had served in the Outer Colony Wars where pirates and raiders learned to fear human determination. Target the lead Korthak cruiser, she ordered. Full spread of kinetic penetrators. The Swift Justice fired 6 tungsten rods at 90% of light speed. The projectiles punched through the Korthak ship's armor like paper, tearing massive holes in its hull. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as the penetrators found ammunition storage and reactor cores. Direct hit, reported the weapons officer. Enemy vessel is breaking apart, Commander Kim smiled coldly. Target the next ship in line. The Korthak response was immediate and confused. They had never faced weapons that could destroy their ships so quickly. Their own energy beams and plasma torpedoes were designed for prolonged battles between shielded vessels. What kind of weapons are those? Demanded Thakkus as he watched his ships die. Unknown, Warlord. The projectiles appear to be simple kinetic impactors, but traveling at near light speed. Our shields are useless against solid matter at those velocities. More human ships entered the battle. The heavy cruiser Thunder Bay opened fire with particle beams that carved through Korthak armor, like hot knives through butter. The missile frigate Rain of Fire launched a spread of nuclear-tipped torpedoes that turned space into a brief sun, but it was Captain Park's Indomitable that provided the most shocking display of human tactics, Captain, reported her navigation officer. We're approaching the planet's atmosphere. Maintain course, Park ordered calmly. Ma'am, at this speed and angle, we'll hit the atmosphere at combat velocity. The friction will... I know exactly what it will do, Lieutenant. All hands prepare for atmospheric entry. The Indomitable dove toward Kepler's rest like a falling meteor. Its armor began to glow red, then white-hot as atmospheric friction turned the ship into a man-made comet. Emergency alert screamed through the ship as temperatures rose beyond safe limits. On the surface, Zephyrian refugees looked up through the crystal formations to see a new star falling from heaven. The human cruiser blazed across the sky, leaving a trail of superheated plasma in its wake. Target acquired, announced Commander Hayes as the Korthak command ship filled their screens. The lizards have never seen a high-speed atmospheric ram. The Indomitable struck the Bone Crusher at 12,000 kilometers per hour. The impact vaporized both ships' outer hulls and sent shockwaves through the Korthak vessel that shattered its internal structure. Thakkus had just enough time to scream in disbelief before his flagship broke apart around him. The surviving human crew evacuated in armored pods as their ship disintegrated. They had known the attack would be suicide for their vessel, but the destruction of the enemy flagship was worth the sacrifice. The remaining Korthak ships found themselves facing a human fleet that fought with tactics no civilized species would consider. When the destroyer Boldventure ran out of ammunition, its captain rammed the nearest enemy ship rather than withdraw. When the cruiser Hammertime lost its main weapons, it used its point defense guns to strafe Korthak ships at close range. Most shocking of all were the boarding actions. Human Marines in powered armor didn't just disable enemy ships. They fought their way through Korthak vessels with weapons that seemed designed for psychological impact as much as efficiency. Marine Sergeant Mike Torres led his squad through the corridors of a captured Korthak destroyer, his chainsaw bayonet roaring as it cut through bulkheads. The Korthak crew had never faced enemies who enjoyed close combat. "Why are they laughing?" gasped a wounded Korthak warrior as human Marines advanced through smoke and sparks. "I think they're having fun," replied his squad leader before a human grenade ended the conversation. In orbit above Kepler's rest, the battle lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, the Korthak invasion force had been completely destroyed. Not a single alien vessel escaped to carry word of the defeat back to Korthak space. On Serenity Prime, Ambassador Veltar watched the battle reports with growing amazement and horror. The humans had saved the mining world, but their methods violated every principle of civilized warfare. They destroyed their own ship to ram an enemy vessel, reported Counselor Jara. The crew knew they would die, but they did it anyway. And their ground forces added another counselor. They fight with weapons that cause unnecessary suffering. Explosive rounds, incendiary devices, something called crowd control, that involves controlled electricity. Veltar studied the tactical recordings. The humans moved through battle like it was a celebration rather than a tragedy. They took risks no sane species would consider, all while displaying what could only be described as enthusiasm for violence. Perhaps, he said quietly, we should reconsider our definition of salvation. Deep in Korthak space, intelligence officers worked frantically to understand what had happened at Kepler's Rest. Supreme Warlord Skarath, ruler of the Dominion, studied the scattered reports with growing confusion and rage. An entire invasion fleet destroyed? He hissed, his reptilian features twisted with disbelief. Thakus commanded 800 ships. Yes, Supreme Warlord, replied Intelligence Commander Vex, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. Long-range sensors confirmed total destruction of all Korthak vessels. No survivors reported. Skarath's claws scraped against his command throne. The Korthak Dominion had never suffered such a complete defeat. For 3 centuries they had expanded across the galaxy, crushing resistance and absorbing weaker species into their empire. What do we know about these humans? Vex activated the holographic display. Very little, Supreme Warlord. They appear to be a recently contacted species from the Outer Rim. Their technology seems primitive by galactic standards, but their combat effectiveness is unexplained. Show me their homeworld. The display shifted to show a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. At first glance, it looked like any other garden world, the kind of peaceful environment that produced weak, civilized species. Then the detailed scans began to appear, and Skarath felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine fear. This cannot be accurate, he whispered. I've confirmed the data 3 times, Supreme Warlord. The planet's weather patterns include atmospheric disturbances that generate winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Surface temperatures range from -80 to +60 degrees. The oceans contain predatory species over 30 meters in length. Skarath stared at the readings. What kind of creature could evolve on such a world? According to the biological surveys, Supreme Warlord, the humans share their planet with several million predatory species. Their evolutionary history includes periods where they were actively hunted by creatures with superior strength, speed, and natural weapons. The display showed images captured by deep space reconnaissance probes. Massive creatures with enormous teeth lurked in Earth's oceans. Land predators that could outrun ground vehicles stalked through dense forests. Even the plants seemed designed to kill with thorns, poisons, and trap mechanisms. How do they survive? Asked Skarath. Intelligence, Supreme Warlord. And cooperation. Humans evolved as pack hunters. They worked together to bring down prey much larger and stronger than themselves. Intelligence Commander Vex pulled up more data. This is where it gets disturbing, Supreme Warlord. Humans don't just survive on their death world. They consider it pleasant. Their colonies actively seek out dangerous environments. They terraform planets by making them more hostile, not less. Skarath studied images of human colonies. They built cities on active volcanoes. They farmed in radiation zones that would kill most galactic species. They established research stations in environments so toxic that Korthak warriors would need full environmental suits just to survive. Look at this, Vex continued. One of their colonies is built entirely underwater, surrounded by predators they call sharks. Another is located on a moon where the surface temperature drops to absolute 0 during the night cycle. Surely their military forces are specially trained for extreme conditions. No, Supreme Warlord. These appear to be civilian settlements, families with young offspring. They raise their children in environments that would be classified as maximum security biological hazard. Zones, the intelligence? Reports painted a picture that challenged everything. The Korthak thought they knew about planetary evolution. Earth wasn't just a hostile world. It was actively trying to kill everything that lived on it. The weather alone could destroy cities. The native life forms included creatures that made Korthak warriors look like harmless pets. What about their psychology? Skarath asked. Vex accessed another file. This may be the most disturbing aspect, Supreme Warlord. Humans appear to seek out dangerous situations for recreation. They engage in activities they call extreme sports, deliberately putting themselves in life-threatening situations for enjoyment. The display showed images of humans throwing themselves off cliffs with primitive cloth wings, diving to crushing depths in Earth's oceans, and climbing vertical rock faces without safety equipment. They raced vehicles at deadly speeds, fought each other in organized combat sports, and explored the most dangerous regions of their planet for fun. They volunteer for military service, Vex continued. Many of their warriors choose combat roles specifically because they find warfare exciting. Battle reports from Kepler's Rest suggest they were actually enjoying the fight. Scareth felt his confidence cracking. The Korthak military was based on fear and intimidation. They conquered other species by being more ruthless and aggressive than their enemies. But how do you intimidate a species that evolved surrounded by creatures trying to eat them? What is their response to our expansion campaign? That's complicated, Supreme Warlord. Intelligence suggests they view our invasion as what they call target practice. Several human officers were recorded discussing the battle as if it were recreational activity. The display showed intercepted communications from the human fleet. Admiral Rodriguez was heard saying, "Haven't had this much fun since the Martian liberation." Captain Park had described ramming the Bone Crusher as better than Christmas morning. Skarath realized with growing horror that the humans weren't fighting. Desperate defense, they were having fun. Supreme Warlord, Vex said quietly, there's more. Our psychological warfare specialists have analyzed human culture. They don't appear to have any concept of surrender. When faced with impossible odds, they become more dangerous, not less. The intelligence files contained examples from human history, battles where outnumbered human forces had fought to the last warrior rather than surrender. Sieges where entire cities had chosen death over defeat. Stories of humans who had sacrificed themselves to deny victory to their enemies. They have a saying, Vex quoted, "Death before dishonor." It appears to be more than just words. As if the military reports weren't bad enough, the cultural analysis painted humans as completely insane by galactic standards. They told stories about heroes who died fighting impossible odds. They celebrated warriors who had chosen death over surrender. Their entertainment included simulated combat that would traumatize most civilized species. Supreme Warlord, our xenobiologists have reached a conclusion. Humans may be the most dangerous species ever encountered. Their entire evolutionary history has prepared them for warfare in ways we cannot match. Skarath stood up from his command throne, his legs shaking slightly. What do you recommend? Immediate withdrawal from all territories adjacent to human space. Classify Earth and all human colonies as exclusion zones. Under no circumstances should Korthak forces engage human vessels. You're suggesting we retreat? From a single species? Supreme Warlord, these aren't just any species. They're Deathworlders. Every aspect of their biology and culture has been shaped by surviving on a planet that actively tries to kill them. They don't just adapt to hostile environments, they thrive in them. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian system, human engineering teams had arrived to help rebuild the damaged colonies. Ambassador Veltar watched in amazement as human workers operated in conditions that should have been impossible. Chief Petty Officer Martinez supervised radiation cleanup on the bombed mining station, working in an environment that registered deadly on every Zephyrian sensor. When Veltar asked how he could survive the exposure, Martinez just shrugged. This is nothing. I grew up in Denver. That's high altitude, lots of natural radiation. Then I did a tour on Titan Station, which makes this place look like a health spa. Veltar looked at the readings again, but the radiation levels would kill most organic life within hours. Yeah, that's what the safety manual says too, Martinez replied cheerfully. But the human body is tougher than most people think. We evolved on a world that throws radiation, poison, extreme temperatures, and hungry monsters at us every day. You adapt or you die. The human casual attitude toward deadly environments was becoming a recurring theme. Engineering teams worked in vacuum without seeming concerned. Medical officers treated injuries that would have been fatal to most species as minor inconveniences. Military personnel discussed their recent battle like they were reviewing a sporting event. The thing you have to understand, explained Captain Chen during a briefing with Zephyrian officials, is that humans see challenges as opportunities. The more dangerous something is, the more interesting it becomes. Counselor Jara asked the question that had been bothering all of them. But why did you come to help us? You don't know us. We have nothing to offer Earth. Captain Chen looked genuinely puzzled by the question. You asked for help. You were being attacked by bullies. That's enough. But the risk? What risk? We're human. Risk is what we do for fun. The Nexus system had been chosen by Supreme Warlord Skarath as the site for his last stand. The massive fortress world of Korth Prime orbited the system's star, surrounded by defensive platforms and the remnants of the Korthak fleet. 8,000 ships had gathered from across the Dominion, representing every available vessel. Scarath stood in his command center, studying the tactical displays with grim determination. The intelligence reports about humanity had shaken him, but retreat was not an option. The Korthak Dominion had never surrendered in its 300-year history. "Status report," he commanded. "All fleet elements in position, Supreme Warlord," replied Fleet Commander Gorthak. "Orbital defense platforms at maximum readiness. Ground forces prepared for invasion. And the humans? Long-range sensors show their fleet approaching. Approximately 200 vessels, same as the force that destroyed Warlord Thackus." Scarath nodded grimly. "Then we make our stand here. Alert all commanders. This battle will determine the future of the Dominion." 3 light hours away, Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Terrible Swift Sword. The ship was humanity's newest and most powerful vessel, armed with weapons that could crack small moons. "Admiral," reported Captain Hayes, "we're approaching the target system. Sensors show massive Korthak fleet concentration around their fortress world." Rodriguez studied the tactical display. The enemy had positioned their forces in concentric defensive rings, with their most powerful ships protecting the inner system. It was a classic last stand formation, impressive, determined, and ultimately useless against human tactics. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All ships prepare for final engagement. Rules of engagement remain weapons-free." On Serenity Prime, Ambassador Veltar monitored the approaching battle with mixed feelings. The humans had proven themselves effective at fighting the Korthak, but their methods remained deeply disturbing to Zephyrian sensibilities. "Perhaps we should suggest diplomatic contact," said Councillor Jara. "Surely, even the Korthak might be willing to negotiate." Now Veltar considered this. "I'll transmit the suggestion to Admiral Rodriguez." The response came back within minutes, and it perfectly summarized human attitudes toward diplomacy with bullies who targeted civilians. "Ambassador," Admiral Rodriguez's voice was polite but firm. "The time for diplomacy ended when they started killing civilians. We'll handle this our way." The battle began with humanity's traditional approach to overwhelming odds. They attacked immediately. The destroyer Relentless, under Captain Sarah Kim, led the assault on the outer defensive ring. Her ship had been refitted with the new kinetic bombardment system, capable of launching tungsten rods at 98% of light speed. "Target the command platform," she ordered. "Full spread." 6 projectiles lanced across space, punching through Korthak shields like they didn't exist. The enemy command platform disintegrated in a chain of explosions that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. "Target eliminated," reported her weapons officer, moving to secondary targets. The Korthak response was immediate but ineffective. Their energy weapons and plasma torpedoes had been designed to fight conventional galactic navies. Against human ships built to withstand the hazards of exploring a death world, they might as well have been throwing rocks. The heavy cruiser Indomitable II, replacement for Captain Park's sacrifice ship, demonstrated humanity's approach to defensive warfare. When surrounded by 12 Korthak destroyers, Captain Williams didn't attempt to escape the trap. "All weapons, continuous fire. Show them what happens when they try to cage a tiger." The human cruiser became the center of a sphere of destruction, its weapons systems firing in all directions simultaneously. Particle beams carved through Korthak hulls while missile pods launched spreads of nuclear-tipped warheads. In less than 10 minutes, all 12 enemy ships had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris, but it was the flagship Terrible Swift Sword that provided the most memorable moment of the battle. Admiral Rodriguez had been monitoring reports of Korthak ground forces preparing to execute Zephyrian prisoners on the fortress world's surface. The reptilian aliens apparently hoped that threatening civilians would force the humans to negotiate. They had badly misunderstood human psychology. "Signal all ships," Rodriguez ordered. "Priority target is now the surface installations holding prisoners. I want precision strikes that neutralize the guards without harming civilians." "Sir?" asked Captain Hayes. "That's going to require close-range bombardment. We'll have to enter the planet's atmosphere." "Then that's what we'll do." The massive dreadnought dove toward the fortress world like a falling mountain. Its armor began to glow as atmospheric friction turned the ship into a controlled meteor. Emergency systems screamed warnings about structural stress and heat buildup. On the surface, Korthak guards looked up in terror as a human capital ship blazed across the sky above them. The terrible Swift Sword's precision weapon systems locked onto guard towers and execution platforms, delivering surgical strikes that vaporized the guards while leaving their prisoners unharmed. Supreme Warlord Scareth watched his fortress world burn with growing despair. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and insane courage that his forces couldn't match. When their ships were damaged, they used them as weapons. When surrounded, they fought harder. When offered quarter, they demanded unconditional surrender instead. Supreme Warlord, reported Fleet Commander Gorthak, we've lost 60% of our fleet. The humans are advancing on all fronts. Signal all remaining ships, Skarath ordered. Final assault formation. We'll take as many of them with us as we can. The last phase of the battle lasted only 30 minutes. The surviving Gorthak ships formed up for a desperate charge at the human flagship, hoping to at least damage the enemy command vessel before they died. They never got the chance. Admiral Rodriguez had been expecting this final gambit. As the Gorthak fleet bunched up for their attack, he activated the ship's communication system on all frequencies. What happened next became legendary throughout galactic space. Rodriguez appeared on screens throughout the Gorthak fleet, calmly eating what appeared to be a sandwich while explosions lit up space around his ship. He looked directly into the camera with the relaxed confidence of someone discussing the weather. "Attention Gorthak vessels," he said between bites. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the United Earth Stellar Navy. You've got about 5 minutes to lay down your arms. Prepare for boarding and try not to make this more fun than it needs to be." He paused to take another bite of his sandwich, completely ignoring the weapons fire that was impacting his ship's shields. "I know what you're thinking. Maybe you can damage us enough to claim some kind of victory. Let me save you the trouble. We're humans. We're from Earth. Our idea of a relaxing vacation is climbing mountains that are actively trying to kill us. Your weapons are annoying us about as much as a light rain shower." Supreme Warlord Skarath stared at the screen in disbelief. The human admiral was treating the largest battle in Gorthak history like a minor inconvenience. Rodriguez finished his sandwich and smiled, that terrifying human expression that showed all his teeth. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to surrender. You're going to release all prisoners. You're going to compensate the Zephyrians for damages. And you're going to promise never to bother peaceful species again. And if we refuse?" Skarath managed to ask. Rodriguez's smile got wider. "Then we'll have to get creative. Trust me, you don't want us to get creative. We're very good at it." The Admiral gestured toward something off-screen. "My weapons officer is showing me some very interesting targeting solutions. Did you know your fortress world has a molten core? My engineers think they can crack it open with about 6 kinetic penetrators. Create a brand new volcano right under your capital city." "You're bluffing," Skarath said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I? We're humans, Warlord. Bluffing is for species that aren't completely insane. We actually think that would be pretty spectacular to watch." Rodriguez leaned back in his command chair. "You've got 60 seconds to decide. Surrender or find out what humans do for entertainment." The silence stretched across space for nearly a full minute. Then one by one, Gorthak ships began powering down their weapons. Supreme Warlord Skarath, ruler of an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds, formally surrendered to a human eating lunch. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. The Gorthak Dominion, one of the most aggressive military powers in known space, had been completely defeated by a previously unknown species from the outer. Rim Ambassador Veltar found himself in the awkward position of thanking humans for their help, while trying to understand exactly what they had unleashed on the galaxy. "Admiral Rodriguez," he said during the post-battle conference, "the Zephyrian Federation is eternally grateful for your assistance. We will remember humanity as our saviors." Rodriguez looked uncomfortable with the praise. "We just did what anyone would do, Ambassador. You asked for help, we helped. But the risks you took, the sacrifices your people made." "What sacrifices?" "We didn't lose a single ship in the final battle. Sure, we lost the first Indomitable at Kepler's Rest, but that was a tactical choice. Captain Park and her crew knew exactly what they were doing.